The guard stood perfectly still. His uniform was crisp. His boots shined under the palace lights. But his face told a different story. Something was wrong. Tourists snapped photos. Children pointed. No one noticed the way his jaw tightened. No one saw the slight tremor in his gloved hand. But Sarah Miller did. She was a photographer from London, visiting the palace on assignment. She had been capturing images of the ceremony for over an hour. Through her lens, she saw what others missed. The guard's eyes flickered toward the palace doors. Once, twice, 3 times in less than a minute. That wasn't normal. Sarah lowered her camera. She watched him closely now. His breathing had changed. Faster, shallow. His lips pressed into a thin line. The other guards remained still as statues. But this one was different. He was fighting something. Fear, maybe, or urgency. Before we continue, if you love stories that make you feel something real, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Sarah moved closer. She pretended to adjust her camera settings. The guard's eyes darted again, this time toward a window on the 2nd floor, then back to the doors. His fingers flexed inside his white gloves. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple despite the cool autumn air. Then she heard it. A faint sound from inside the palace. A shout, maybe, or a crash. It was hard to tell through the thick walls. But the guard heard it too. His entire body tensed. His hand moved slightly toward his side. Just an inch. But enough. Sarah's heart began to race. She looked around. Other tourists were laughing, taking selfies, completely unaware. The other guards showed no reaction. But this man knew something. And whatever it was, it terrified him. A door behind the guard opened. A palace official stepped out. He was older, wearing a dark suit. He whispered something to the guard. The guard's face went pale. Actually pale. Sarah saw the color drain from his cheeks. The official walked back inside quickly. Too quickly, the guard took a breath. A deep one. Like he was preparing himself for something terrible. His hand moved to his radio. He pressed the button, but didn't speak. Some kind of silent signal. Within seconds, 2 more guards appeared from around the corner. They moved fast, but tried to look casual. They failed. Sarah's instincts screamed at her. Something was happening inside that palace. Something serious. Something dangerous. The guard she had been watching finally moved. Just slightly. He shifted his weight. His eyes scanned the crowd. And for just a second, his gaze locked with Sarah's. In that moment, she saw it clearly. Pure, unfiltered fear. Then his training kicked back in. His face went blank again. But it was too late. Sarah had seen the truth. And now she couldn't look away. More officials emerged from a side entrance. They walked quickly toward a black car parked in the courtyard. One of them carried a medical bag. A red one. The kind used for emergencies. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The crowd still laughed and chatted around her. But she knew. Something terrible was unfolding behind those palace walls. And the guard standing at attention, fighting to keep his composure, knew exactly what it was. Asterisk, the sirens started quietly at first, distant, then closer, much closer. 3 ambulances turned into the palace gates. No lights flashing, no loud alarms, but moving fast. Too fast for a routine visit? The palace guards immediately moved to block the public's view. They formed a human wall between the tourists and the vehicles. Sarah's camera was already up. She captured everything. The ambulances stopping at a private entrance, medical teams rushing inside with equipment, a stretcher being unloaded. Her hands shook slightly as she clicked the shutter. The guard she had been watching was no longer alone. An officer stood beside him now, speaking into his ear. The guard nodded. His face remained blank, but his chest rose and fell rapidly. He was holding himself together by pure willpower. A woman near Sarah noticed the ambulances. "What's happening?" she asked her husband. "Probably just a drill," he replied, barely looking up from his phone. But Sarah knew better. This was no drill. The medical team's faces were too serious, their movements too urgent, and that red emergency bag hadn't been carried out. It went inside. Someone in that palace needed immediate medical attention. More officials appeared. They spoke in tight clusters. One man made frantic phone calls. Another barked orders at the palace staff. Sarah watched a young woman in uniform rush past, tears streaming down her face. She tried to hide them but couldn't. The tourist crowd began to sense something. Whispers spread. Phones came out. People started recording. Palace security moved quickly to establish a wider perimeter. They asked everyone to step back. Politely at first. Then more firmly, Sarah stood her ground. She was press. She had credentials. She wasn't leaving. A senior guard approached her. "Miss, I need you to move back with the others. I'm a photographer. I'm covering the ceremony, not today. Please step back." His tone left no room for argument. Sarah retreated but kept her camera ready. She found a spot near the palace gates where she could still see the main entrance. More vehicles arrived. Black sedans with tinted windows. Government plates. Important people were being summoned. Sarah's mind raced. Who was inside? A royal family member? Someone injured? Sick? Something worse? The first guard, the one who had shown his fear so clearly, was being replaced. Another guard took his position. The original guard walked quickly toward the palace, no longer maintaining his ceremonial pace. He practically ran. A news van pulled up outside the gates. Then another. Word was spreading. Sarah wasn't the only one who sensed something major happening. Reporters jumped out with microphones and cameras. Security tried to keep them back, but the questions started immediately. What's the emergency? Who is hurt? Is the royal family safe? No answers came. Just stern faces and repeated requests to stay back. Sarah noticed something else. Palace curtains on the second floor, normally open, were being drawn closed, one by one, like they were hiding something or someone. The window the guard had kept glancing at was now completely dark. Her phone buzzed. Her editor, Sarah, "What's happening there? Social media is going crazy." "I don't know yet, but it's serious. Very serious. Stay there." "Send me everything you get." Sarah moved along the fence line, trying to find a better angle. Other photographers did the same. The air felt electric, tense. Everyone knew they were witnessing something significant. They just didn't know what. Then the palace doors opened again. The medical team emerged, moving slower now, their faces grim. They loaded equipment back into the ambulances, but no stretcher came out. No patient. The ambulances didn't leave either. They just waited. That's when Sarah realized the truth. Whoever was hurt wasn't being taken to a hospital. Either they didn't need to go, or they couldn't be moved. Neither option was good. A palace spokesperson finally appeared at the gates. Young, nervous, clearly unprepared for this moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, we ask for your patience and understanding. There has been an incident inside the palace. We will provide more information as soon as possible. For now, we ask that you respect the privacy of those involved and clear the area." "What kind of incident?" A reporter shouted. "Is someone injured?" Another called out, "Is this a security threat?" The spokesperson held up her hands. "That's all I can say right now. Please, we need you to step back." She disappeared back through the gates. The crowd erupted in speculation. Sarah's camera captured it all. The confusion, the fear, the desperate need to know what was happening behind those palace walls. And somewhere inside, a guard who had tried so hard to hide. His emotions was probably facing whatever tragedy had just unfolded. Asterisk, 30 minutes passed. The crowd grew larger. News helicopters circled overhead. Sarah's phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages from news outlets wanting her photos. She stayed focused on the palace. Watching, waiting, the guard from earlier appeared at a side window. Just for a moment. His face was visible through the glass. He was crying, actually crying. He wiped his eyes quickly and disappeared back into the shadows. Sarah's heart sank. Whatever happened inside wasn't just serious. It was devastating. A black car finally left the palace grounds. Tinted windows, moving slowly, respectfully, like it was carrying something precious or someone important. The crowd pressed forward, trying to see inside. They see, oh, Sarah zoomed in with her camera. Through the back window, she caught a glimpse. An older man in the rear seat, his head bowed, his hand covering his face. He looked broken. Absolutely broken. Asterisk, asterisk. More cars followed. A convoy, officials, family members maybe, all looking shattered. The palace gates closed behind them, heavy. Final, a senior palace official approached the gathered press. He was older, distinguished, and clearly struggling to maintain composure. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a statement.
Ow.
Everyone went silent. Cameras focused. Phones recorded. The world was watching now. Approximately 2:15 this afternoon, Her Royal Highness Princess Catherine collapsed in her private chambers. Medical personnel were immediately summoned. Despite their best efforts, and despite the quick response of our medical team, the princess suffered a severe stroke. She was pronounced deceased at 3:07 this afternoon. The royal family asks for privacy during this difficult time. Further details will be provided in the coming hours. Thank you. The statement ended. The official turned and walked away. He didn't take questions. He couldn't. His voice had cracked on the word deceased. The crowd erupted. Some people gasped. Others cried. Strangers hugged each other. Sarah stood frozen, her camera lowered. Princess Catherine was only 43 years old, healthy, active, beloved by millions. And now she was gone. Everything made sense now. The guards' fear, the ambulances, the officials rushing in, the closed curtains. He had known. That guard had known his princess was dying, and he couldn't do anything but stand at attention and watch it happen. Sarah thought about that moment their eyes had met, the pure terror she had seen in his face. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for her, for the princess, for what was about to be lost. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. She wasn't alone. Grown men stood crying openly. Women sobbed. The princess had been more than royalty. She had been a symbol of grace, of kindness. She visited hospitals, supported charities, played with children in the streets. She made people believe in goodness, and now she was gone. Security stopped trying to move the crowd. How could they? This was history, tragedy, the kind of moment people would remember forever. Where they were, what they were doing, how they felt when they heard. Sarah looked at the palace windows. She imagined that guard inside, still in uniform, still at his post, but shattered inside. He had served her, protected her, and in her final moments, all he could do was stand outside and feel helpless. The news spread globally within minutes. Social media exploded. Tributes poured in from world leaders, celebrities, ordinary people. Photos of the princess filled every screen. Her smile, her warmth, her incredible spirit. The palace flag was lowered to half-staff. That simple gesture made it real, permanent. The princess was truly gone. Sarah finally left the palace grounds as evening fell. The crowd remained. People laid flowers at the gates, thousands of them. Teddy bears, cards, letters, candles flickered in the darkness. A nation had lost someone special, someone irreplaceable. At home, Sarah uploaded her photos to her editor. They would be seen around the world, the ambulances arriving, the officials' grim faces. The moment the announcement was made, but the photo that stayed with her was the first one, the guard. His face showing everything he wasn't supposed to show. The fear, the knowing, the helplessness. She called the palace press office. She wanted to know about him. About that guard. Was he okay? They couldn't comment. Privacy reasons. But she heard something in the spokesperson's voice. Concern. Worry. That guard wasn't just upset. He was destroyed. Sarah learned his name through careful investigation. Thomas Bennett, 28 years old. He had served in the Royal Guard for 6 years. The princess had personally commended him twice for his service. They had spoken many times. She always remembered his name, asked about his family. That was the kind of person she was. And he had been standing outside when she died, unable to help, unable to say goodbye, unable to do anything but maintain his post and hide his breaking heart. Asterisk, the funeral was scheduled for 10 days later. The nation mourned. Schools closed. Businesses shut down. The world watched as a country said goodbye to their princess. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Thomas, the guard who had shown his heart for just a moment. She wanted to tell his story, not for sensation, not for clicks, but because his pain represented something deeper, the hidden grief of those who serve, those who protect, those who care deeply but must remain invisible. She reached out to former royal guards. Most wouldn't talk, but one did. An older man named James, who had retired 5 years earlier. The hardest part of being a guard isn't the long hours, James told her over coffee. It's caring about people you're supposed to stay detached from. The princess was impossible not to love. She treated us like humans, like friends. When you lose someone like that, and you can't show it, can't break down, can't even acknowledge your pain because you're in uniform, it destroys something inside you. You think Thomas will be okay? Sarah asked. Dr. James was quiet for a long moment. I hope so. But that kind of trauma, having to stand there while someone you care about dies, knowing it's happening and being powerless, that stays with you forever. The day of the funeral arrived. Sarah was there as press. So was the world. Millions lined the streets. The coffin passed slowly through London, covered in white roses. The princess's favorite, and there, among the honor guard walking beside the coffin, was Thomas Bennett. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed, but his uniform was perfect. His posture straight, his steps measured and precise. He was doing his duty. One final time, Sarah watched him through her lens. She saw the moment his composure nearly broke. When they passed the children's hospital the princess had visited every month. Sick children stood with their parents, crying, holding signs that read, "Thank you, princess, and we love you." Thomas's jaw clenched. His eyes glistened. But he didn't break. He kept walking, one foot in front of the other, professional, strong, devoted. The funeral service was held at Westminster Abbey. 2,000 people attended. Kings and queens, presidents, movie stars, but also regular people. Teachers, nurses, the homeless man the princess used to stop and talk to every Tuesday. Sarah wasn't allowed inside. She waited with thousands of others outside, watching on the giant screen set up throughout the city. The princess's husband spoke. He could barely get through his eulogy. Their children sat in the front row, holding each other, too young to fully understand, but old enough to know their mother was never coming home. When the service ended, the honor guard carried the coffin out. Thomas was at the front right corner. The weight of the coffin pressed on his shoulder. But it wasn't just physical weight. Sarah could see it in his face. The weight of grief, of loss, of loving someone he was never supposed to love. The procession moved to the royal cemetery. Private. Family only. The guards delivered the coffin and stepped back. Their duty complete. Sarah later learned what happened next from a palace staff member who was there. Thomas had held himself together through the entire ceremony, through the burial, through the final prayers. But when the last rose was placed on the coffin and the family walked away, he finally broke. He fell to his knees, right there in his ceremonial uniform, and he sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere primal. Other guards tried to help him up. He couldn't stand. His captain knelt beside him, put an arm around his shoulders, and let him cry. No one judged him. Every guard there understood. They had all loved the princess. They had all lost someone precious. But Thomas had been there. He had seen it happening. He had felt helpless. And that pain was different. Eventually they helped him to his feet. escorted him away from the gravesite, sat with him until he could breathe normally again. The captain later reported that Thomas was given immediate leave. Mandatory counseling. Time to heal, but would he ever truly heal? Could anyone heal from that? Sarah wrote the story. She called it The Guard Who Couldn't Look Away. It went viral. Millions read it. They cried. They shared it. They finally understood the hidden cost of service. People started leaving flowers at the palace, made specifically for Thomas and the other guards. Notes thanking them, acknowledging their pain, telling them it was okay to grieve. The royal family released a statement. The princess loved her guards like family. We know they are grieving too. Their service and dedication during this difficult time has been extraordinary. We thank them and ask that they be given space to mourn in their own way. Thomas didn't return to active duty for 6 weeks. When he did, he was different, quieter. The light in his eyes had dimmed, but he was there, standing at his post, honoring her memory the only way he knew how. Sarah visited the palace 3 months after the funeral. She saw Thomas from a distance, still in uniform, still professional, but she noticed something. On his wrist, hidden mostly by his white glove, was a small purple bracelet. The princess's signature color, a tiny rebellion against regulations. A private memorial, a way to keep her close. 1 year passed. The palace had changed. The absence of the princess was felt everywhere. Her laugh no longer echoed through the halls. Her kindness no longer brightened the darkest days. But life continued. It had to Sarah return to the palace on the anniversary of the princess's death. A memorial service was being held. Private, intimate. Just family and close staff. But Sarah had been invited. Her story had touched the royal family. They wanted her there. She arrived early. The palace was quiet, somber. Black ribbons hung from the gates. A new statue of the princess had been unveiled in the courtyard. Bronze, beautiful, capturing her warmth and grace perfectly. Thomas was there, standing near the statue, out of uniform for once. Just a regular suit. He looked older than his 29 years. The weight of that day still visible in his eyes. But there was something else there too. Not quite peace. Not quite healing. But acceptance. Maybe Sarah approached him carefully. Thomas. He turned. Recognized her immediately. Sarah Miller, the photographer. You remember? I remember everything from that day. His voice was soft, haunted. I saw you watching me. Saw you notice what I was trying to hide. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. No. He shook his head. Don't apologize. Your story, it helped people understand. It helped me understand. That what I felt was okay. That grief isn't weakness. They stood in silence for a moment. Looking at the statue, she was special. Thomas said finally. Not because she was royalty, because she was genuinely good. You don't meet many people like that in life. You cared about her. You all did. But yes, I cared. More than I probably should have. More than was professional. He paused. When I heard her collapse, when they rushed past me with medical equipment, I wanted to break formation. I wanted to run inside, to help somehow. But I couldn't. I had to stand there. And that feeling, that helplessness, it nearly destroyed me. Sarah saw tears in his eyes. He didn't hide them this time. The worst part, Thomas continued, was that I never got to say goodbye. Never got to tell her what her kindness meant to me. She once asked about my mother who was sick. Remembered her name months later. Asked for updates. That's who she was. And I never got to thank her for that. For seeing me as a person, not just a uniform. She knew, Sarah said gently. People like that, they know the impact they have. She knew you cared. I hope so. Thomas wiped his eyes. I've been in therapy. A year now. It helps. But some days are harder than others. Some days I still see her face in that window. Still hear the urgency in the official's voice when he told me something was wrong. Still feel the weight of that coffin on my shoulder. Have you thought about leaving? doing something else? Every day. He smiled sadly. But this is where I feel close to her, where her memory lives. So I stay. I stand guard. I honor her the only way I can. The memorial service began. The family arrived. The princess's husband looked worn. Her children had grown, but grief still hung heavy on all of them. Thomas stood with the other guards. A small group. All of them had served the princess directly. All of them loved her. They each placed a white rose on the statue's base. A private ritual. A moment of shared pain. The princess's youngest child, a daughter of 8, walked up to Thomas. She held out a small card. Handmade crayon drawing of a guard and a princess. "Thank you for taking care of my mummy," she said in a tiny voice. Thomas knelt down. Took the card with shaking hands. "It was my honor, Your Highness." "Said you were always kind. That you had a nice smile." Thomas couldn't speak. He just nodded. The little girl hugged him. This man she barely knew, but who had loved her mother, who had grieved for her, who understood loss. When the ceremony ended, Thomas walked to the cemetery alone. Private. No cameras. Just him and her grave. He sat on the grass beside the headstone. Talked to her like she could hear him. Told her about his mother's recovery. About the new guards he was training. About how much everyone missed her. About how the world was a little darker without her light. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," he whispered. "I'm sorry I had to just stand there. But I promise you, I'll never forget. I'll tell your story. I'll make sure people remember how good you were. How much you cared. That's my duty now. Not just to guard, but to remember." Placed a single purple flower on her grave. Stood, saluted, and walked away. Sarah watched from a distance. She didn't take photos. Some moments were too sacred. Too private. This wasn't a story to capture. It was a testament to witness. As Thomas disappeared down the path, Sarah thought about courage. Real courage. Not the kind shown in battle or crisis, but the quiet courage of showing up every day, of facing pain and continuing, of loving deeply even when it costs everything. Thomas would carry that day with him forever. The day he stood at attention while his princess died, but he would also carry her kindness, her memory, her impact. And in carrying that, he kept her alive. Not just in history books or statues, but in the hearts of those who knew her, who loved her, who would never forget. Asterisk. 5 years later, Thomas stood in a classroom, not in uniform, in civilian clothes, speaking to a group of young recruits who wanted to join the Royal Guard. He was 33 now. Still serving, but also teaching, mentoring, helping others understand what the job really meant. Not just the ceremony, not just the discipline, but the emotional weight of caring for people you're sworn to protect. Being a guard isn't just about standing still, he told them. It's about being present for people in their most important moments, their celebrations, their sorrows, their private pain. And sometimes you'll care about them. Really care? And that's when the job becomes both beautiful and devastating. A young woman raised her hand. "How do you handle it?" "The caring part." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "You don't handle it. You carry it. And you find healthy ways to process what you carry. Therapy, friends, family. But you never pretend the weight isn't there. That's when it breaks you." He told them about the princess. Not the official story, the human story. How she remembered names. How she asked about their lives. How she made them feel seen. And how losing her had nearly destroyed him. "I thought I had to be strong by showing nothing," Thomas said. "I thought grief was weakness. But I was wrong. Grief is love with nowhere to go. And there's nothing weak about love." The recruits listened with rapt attention. This wasn't the sterile professional training they expected. This was real, raw, honest. After class, Thomas returned to the palace. His shift started at 4. He walked through the familiar halls, past portraits of former royals, past the window where he had once stood, knowing tragedy was unfolding inside. He no longer flinched when he passed that spot. The pain had softened, not disappeared, but changed into something bearable, something meaningful. At his post, Thomas stood at attention. Tourists took photos. Children waved. The ceremony continued like it always had. But Thomas was different now, stronger, not because he had stopped feeling, but because he had learned to feel fully and survive it. During his break, he visited the princess's statue. He did this often. A private ritual, a moment of connection. "Hello, Your Highness," he said quietly. "I trained 12 new guards this month. Told them about you. About what real service looks like. I think you'd be proud." He smiled. A real smile. The first genuine one in years. "I'm doing okay now, finally. It took time. A lot of time. But I'm finding my way. I'm helping others. Making sure they don't make the mistakes I made. Making sure they know it's okay to be human." A light breeze moved through the courtyard. Thomas liked to imagine it was her, acknowledging him, thanking him for remembering. For continuing, Sarah visited that same afternoon. She was working on a book now, about invisible grief, about people who carry loss in silence. Thomas's story was the centerpiece. They met for coffee near the palace. Thomas looked good, healthier. The darkness in his eyes had lifted, not completely, but enough. "I read your draft chapters," Thomas said. "They're beautiful. Painful, but beautiful. Thank you for trusting me with your story. It's not just my story anymore. It belongs to everyone who has had to grieve publicly while dying privately. Everyone who has had to be strong when they wanted to break. That's bigger than me." Sarah smiled. "You've become quite philosophical. Trauma does that. Makes you think. Makes you question. Makes you grow, if you let it." He paused. "I'm getting married next year, Thomas." "That's wonderful." "She's a teacher. Met her at one of the princess's charity events. She understands the work. The weight. She's patient with my bad days. And she knew the princess too. Loved her. So we share that. The memory. The loss. The healing. The princess would be happy for you." "I think so too." Thomas's eyes grew distant. "You know what's strange? I used to think that day ruined my life. The day she died. The day I had to stand there and watch and do nothing. But now looking back, I think it saved me somehow. It broke me open. Made me feel everything. And in feeling everything, I became more human. More real. I stopped hiding behind the uniform and started living as myself." They talked for another hour. About healing. About memory. About how tragedy shapes us, but doesn't have to define us. When they parted, Sarah felt hope. Not the naive kind, but the earned kind. The kind that comes from watching someone climb out of darkness and find light. Again, Thomas returned to his post for the evening shift. As the sun set over the palace, he stood guard, still, professional, but no longer empty. He carried the princess with him. Her kindness, her memory, her impact. And in carrying her, he honored her more than any ceremony ever could. Tourists passed by. Some took photos. Most didn't notice him. But one little girl stopped, stared up at him with wide eyes. "Are you real?" she asked. Thomas smiled. Just slightly. A tiny break in protocol. "Yes," he whispered. "Very real." The girl smiled back. Her mother pulled her along, but that moment stayed with Thomas. A reminder that beneath the uniform, beneath the training, beneath everything, he was human. He felt, he loved. He grieved, he healed, and he continued. Night fell over the palace. The lights came on. The city buzzed with life. And Thomas Bennett stood at his post. No longer the terrified young guard who watched his princess die, but a man who had survived the unsurvivable, who had learned that strength isn't the absence of feeling. It's the courage to feel everything and still show up the next day. The princess had taught him that. In life through her kindness, in death through her absence, and now, in memory, through the lessons that would stay with him forever. He would never forget that day. The day his expression gave it all away. The day his princess died. The day he learned what it truly meant to serve, to love, and to lose. But he would also never forget what came after. The healing. The growth. The understanding that grief, when faced honestly, can transform us. Can make us more compassionate, more present, more alive. And as he stood there in the darkness, Thomas made a silent promise. To the princess, to himself, to everyone who had ever loved and lost, he would live fully, feel deeply, serve genuinely, and never ever apologize for being beautifully, painfully, courageously human.